All right. Well, we'll give some folks some time to get on here and all that good stuff. Make sure everything's hooked up right here, which I believe it is. And you can hear me okay, I hope. Let me know if you can hear me okay. Finally early. Peter is finally early. All right. Yeah. All right. We got 4 thumbs up and 13 people on. 5. There we go. Good to have everybody. Michael, hope you're doing well. They made me the wrong coffee drink at Caribou. I caught them before they put like 850,000 pumps of sugar in it. Hopefully it's not buffering too bad. Frozen? Oh, man. Is it messing up? Man, I don't know what the deal is with that. Let me know if you can all hear me and see me okay. Unfortunately, you have to see me. All right. Now you can. I wonder why it does that. I don't know if it's my processor, if it's something with YouTube. I don't know. I'll have to have Luke take a look at this. We're going to be using a new system here in a little while. It's going to take a little while, but we're going to have a new system, and it's going to be way better than what it is now. So hang on. It's going to get better. Good afternoon, Pierce. Javier. What's up? Hey, what's up with you? How you doing, brother? Hope you're doing well out there in YouTube land. Good evening. It's evening where you're at. Okay, I'm early. I got on early just to give everybody some time to get on because I got a lot to talk about, and man, oh man, do we have a lot to talk about. I've been doing some extra research here today, and there's so much more that could be done. I don't know how far we're going to get today with everything, but we're going to start on this. Hopefully we get through the ancient American Indian part. Now, we're not going to get into the religious aspects. We'll pick that up later as time goes by. But, Mike, the authorized Mike, Maria Perez Quadzillo. I don't know if I said that right. Sad day for my city. The local library here is teaching witchcraft to children, young adults, holding classes. Andrea, what are they teaching? Maria, I'm sorry you were in surgery. Hopefully you get better. First timer, girl plus God blessed. Yeah, why? Because they allow everything wicked right now known to man. Except they disdain and hate the Lord Jesus Christ, and you can't say his name anywhere. But you can teach whatever you want to, anything else. You can teach whatever else you want, as long as you don't teach about Jesus. You know why? Because them devils know he's God. That's why. And that's why they don't want you to teach about him. That's the reason why. They don't want you to teach about Jesus Christ. Why? Because he's God. That's why. They don't care if you teach about Allah or witchcraft or Satan or anybody else. But they know there's power in that name of Jesus. See if they'll give us free reign to preach in these schools and do everything that they do with all their LGBTQ stuff and all that stuff. You know they won't do that. Why? Because they're afraid of the name of Jesus. They know that name's toppled kingdoms, destroyed empires, set up liberty. They're scared of that name. Oh, yeah, most libraries have an Audible Bible set. That's not the point. The point is, go ahead and speak it there and start teaching it and see what happens. First-time commenter, long-time watcher. Watching. $33. That's right. Watching 33. 12 have liked it or thumbs up. Hey, share it on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere you can. Share this video. Hey, the first Giants video that we did here at the beginning of the week, really well. Let's see. Over 1,600. My husband got our daughter her first King James Bible yesterday. Amen. That's good. Praise the Lord for that. Can you answering for my question? Well, maybe. I've got a few minutes before we get started. Joe McDonald, how are you? Hope you're doing well. Loud and clear from Holland. Is that the nation of Holland or is that Holland, Michigan? Which one is that? Hello from Oregon or Oregon. From Manchester, here in the UK. Yeah, thumbs up the video. We only got 15 thumbs up. We only have 32 people on. That's why I start early. Because when I get into the content, I want people to be on here. So I jump on here about 14, 15 minutes early. The Israelites were commanded by God to destroy all the giant tribes in the Middle East. Is that how they ended up in America? That's a good question. Samuel, I actually don't know the answer to that. There's some speculation. The Indians talk and say that there was part of a certain group of tribe or something that left that area and came over to this area. I honestly don't know. There's so many things about history that we've been robbed from that has been stolen from us. It's been absolutely stolen from us. And you know, we don't know. We just don't know. So there's not clear-cut evidence for us. A lot of it's been, you know, when you're going to find out today a whole lot about the Indians, the giants that they found, and the fact that they weren't here first. The red man wasn't the first here. So I wonder if anybody's going to call for giants to get reparations. This is true, Mike. They were not ancient Mormons. Nobody was dumb enough to be a Mormon back then. Just kidding. They were all of the same spirit. We got to give the giants, if they're around, food stamps, unemployment, a medical card. I just don't want to feed them. Nobody can afford to feed him. A dude that's like 1,000 pounds and 12 feet tall, I'm not feeding that guy. He just like bite the head off of like everything. That's true. They are cannibalistic, we've been told. Now, we don't see that. I haven't found that in the Bible yet. I'd have to look. Well, I haven't, I don't believe, but I think there's a key passage. There's some key passages that I want to look at, not today, but in the weeks to come. You know, and we'll look at those and see. I don't think they care if it's organic. Probably don't. I doubt they do. This is water. It's got some lime in it, but it's water. Okay, well, we got 42 on. We still have 5 minutes, so I can ramble along here. Hey, you know what? This is a good time to talk to you about this. I'm telling you. Bubbly water. Yeah, I like bubbly water. I don't know. I like it. I drink a lot of it. Should we view Enoch and the Dead Sea Scrolls as historical? Well, the Dead Sea Scrolls, I would say probably so for the most part, but not perfect because they could be tainted with other things. But the Book of Enoch, no. I would not. There's nothing to prove its authenticity. Right? Anyway, so what was I going to say to you? I got kicked off of Facebook again. That's what I was going to say to you. They kicked me off of Facebook again. And I got kicked off of Facebook because of a post I did about transgenders, and Marvel Comics superheroes. And I said that Christians should stop watching that stuff, and they kicked me off. I said something about trans filth. And what's it going to take for Christians to stop watching that? And click, I was gone. I woke up the next morning. I got a notice from Facebook. They said I was on timeout again for 7 days. Seven days. Yep. Facebook jail again. 7 days. What did I do? I called out tranny superheroes. That is the gayest thing I've ever heard in my life. But seriously, they're all wearing spandex. They all look like a bunch of homos anyway. And why is that bad to call them homos? They call themselves homos. They call themselves queers. So they kicked me off. They told me I did not follow the collective's program. And if I did not follow the collective's program, I would not be permitted to be there. So if I get kicked off of YouTube, I need you to send me your email address to pastorcooley@icloud.com or go to opbconline.org and hit the subscribe button so you could subscribe to our email. So if I'm kicked off here, I'll be on sermonaudio.com/pastorcooley, and I'll be live, and I can email you all, and I will be there live, Lord willing. It'll be great. In case YouTube decides that they don't like me anymore. Right? So, anyway. Sodomites, queers, all of it. I don't know if anybody goes on BitChute. I don't even know if I'm supposed to say BitChute. I don't even know if I'm supposed to say that. Can reprobates be saved? No. Not if they're reprobate. They're rejected. They're rejected silver. Smackamo says, I'm on it. I can only chat. No way to like. I don't know why you can't like. Come on, there's 58 people on here and nobody's thumbs up the video. Come on, gotta thumbs up the video. Come on. Thumbs up the video. Wow. Chick-fil-A, yeah. 60 people on. Oh, man, about the 2 o'clock hour. Hey, maybe these people know we start at 2. They're coming on now. We're getting up there. Good afternoon, Panphila 70. All right. We got 31 on there, 60 people on, 31 thumbs up. Let's get some more thumbs up on there. Let's share this on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, anywhere and everywhere you possibly can. Except I think it does. I know its own space. It's gone. It's out of there. I've only ate fries at Chick-fil-A one time. When I was a kid, they used to have the samples of Chick-fil-A in the mall, in South Park Mall in the Quad Cities or North Park Mall in the Quad Cities. And there was like no Chick-fil-A's. It was just in a mall, and it was like a little... My break's over. Talk to you later. Okay, Smackamo. I don't know if I know who you are. How do I know who you are? Who's Smackamo? How do I know who Smackamo is? And how are you going to call me? There's somebody named Smackamo that's going to call me. Oh, it's Mike. I know you. I know which Mike you are. You're the Italian Mike. The Italian Stallion Mike. All right, Mike. Well, you need to watch this later and watch the one from Monday. They're really informative. They're really good. Anyway, I suppose I better get started. Anyone else follow Charles Lawson and Ron Wyatt? Ron Wyatt's dead. Nobody's following him anywhere. Charles Lawson, disagree with him on a few things, but I'm sure he's a good man. Let's see. Who's the... Ron Wyatt had some interesting things. Actually, there's 60 people that are on here live right now, but not on the chat. They're on the actual broadcast. All right, who's ready to talk about some giants? Boy, do I have a giant of a tale to tell you. That's a lame joke, but that's okay. All right. Let's see. Charles Lawson, a brilliant preacher. I'm sure he's a good man. I'm sure he's a good man. I just don't get out much and talk to people much, so I don't know. All right. Here we go. Better get back to work. Don't want to steal time. Yep, get back to work, Nola. Tracks, whatever that means. Nola. Whatever that means. Becky. Good to have you on here. Hey, that's great, Peter. That's good. I want to do a PowerPoint on hell. You know, I really do want to do a PowerPoint on hell. Okay, let's see. Where do we want to go today? And then we're going to start in the scriptures. I just want to touch on this Nephilim thing here a little bit. This fallen angels, sons of God, daughters of men. Doctrine that is absolutely hated by so many. Let me get to it here. Turn to the book of Jude. Jude. The book of Jude. And I want you to turn to verse number 6. Well, verse number 5 is good too. I will therefore put you in remembrance, though you once knew this, how the Lord, having saved the people out of the land of Egypt, afterward destroyed them that believe not, and the angels which kept not their first estate. Well, who are they? They're the ones in Genesis 6 that kept not their first estate. Now, try to stay with me, kids. Try not to be distracted by the thread. Try to stay with me. And the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation. Where is that habitation? It was in heaven. That was their habitation. They left the place to be in. He hath reserved in everlasting chains under darkness unto the judgment of the great day. Now, there's a sharp comparison that is made here. And listen up and pay attention to the comparison that is made here. Even as Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, what did Sodom and Gomorrah do? And the cities about them in like manner, giving themselves over to fornication and going after strange flesh. Strange flesh. Even as Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, no. Here's the point. It was the Sodomites that were going after strange flesh. But they also went after angelic flesh. You're right, Mike, which was strange flesh to them. Okay? Even as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities about them in like manner, giving themselves over to fornication and going after strange flesh, are set forth for an example, suffering the vengeance of eternal fire. Likewise also these filthy dreamers defile the flesh, despise dominion, and speak evil of dignities. So these people, these men in Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed because what did they do? They went after strange flesh. God hated it. God was angry with them. Then they tried to rape angels. That spirit that community has, the LGBTQ community, that spirit, same spirit. Same spirit. Yep. You know, and Peter talks about the long suffering of the Lord. He talks about in those days, since the fathers fell asleep. He talks about that. Let's see. He talks about the days of Noah. All those things. And turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemn them with an overthrow, making them an ensample to those that after should live ungodly. And in verse number 4, he says this in 2 Peter chapter 2, verse number 4. For if God spared not the angels that sinned, the same one Jude's talking about, the same one that are where? The ones that are where? In Genesis chapter 6. For if God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell, and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved unto judgment. That he talks about the old world. Look, pay attention. Listen, if I was out on the street, I'd be like yelling really loud so you'd listen to me. And spared not the old world, but saved Noah. He goes back and he compares those angels that fell. He says the same time period he's dealing with. What is he dealing with? The flood. He's dealing with the flood. That's what he's dealing with. See how he did that? Mm-hmm. Yep. and turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemn them with an overthrow, making them an ensample of those that after should live ungodly. So then he goes to that. So see how the two events, the fallen angels, the Sodomites, the destruction of the world. He deals with all of those because there's a likeness, and so shall the coming of the Son of Man be in the days of Noah. Right? It's all connected. It's all part of it. And it's all the same example. That's why he's talking about strange flesh. Now, what was produced in that Genesis 6 relationship? Fallen, or the giants. The giants were produced from that. They were the offspring of that. And also after that. And also after that. So, what I'm about to share with you here today is going to deal with Indians. This is going to deal with the ancient American Indians that were here at the time that gave testimony to giants and their mounds. And in those mounds were bodies. In those mounds were bodies. And many times those bodies were giants. And that's what I'm going to show you. Well, I wish I could show you. I'm working on that still. But I'm going to at least tell you about it today. I'm going to read you these. I'm going to read you these accounts. Okay? Let's get to it here. You ready? I guess I'll read you this account first here. Whole races of Americans 7 to 9 feet tall. Now, before I get started, let me say this to you. Before I get started, let me say this. I think there are I think there's different things going on here. That when we read these different accounts, I think the people that are 7 to 8 feet tall for the most part, and they have these ancient bodies that they find in their graves and all this, some of those ancient people, I don't know that they are the Raphaim. I don't know if they're the actual race of giants. I think some of them could be pre-flood people that they found their bodies and things like that, or post-flood, even at that time, and they were a little bigger. I don't know that 100%. I can't prove that 100%, okay? But I think when you find the ones that are 9 feet tall up, then you see something totally different. Now, the giant people, and they don't have birth defects, they are big, strong, burly people. Okay? They are big, strong, burly people. Beings. Okay? Now, the reason I mention that is because I think both destroys evolution. These bigger people that are 7 to 8 feet tall, 7 foot tall race of people, they destroy evolution. It destroys the doctrine of evolution. It destroys the teaching of evolution. Because here are big, strapping, huge men that were healthy, that were good, or that were healthy, that were strong men, and they would be larger than your average men today. And then we got worse. We devolved, so to speak. We're not better. We're worse. That's one step. That's one way to put it. Or that's one perspective. But the other is Something different. Okay? So, as a kid growing, oh, by the way, let me say this to you. Joe Taylor's book. All right? Joe Taylor's book. I visited his museum in Texas years ago. Good man, kind man, and I think I'm going to have him on this broadcast. I messaged him yesterday and talked to him, and I believe I'll have him on this broadcast. I will be interviewing him someday soon. Lord willing. He did some artifacts. He's been on giant hunts, right? So save all your questions for the end because I'm not going to answer any right now. Save them all for the end, and I'll give you 10 minutes at the end, and we'll answer some. But I want to get into this because I got a lot to cover today. All right? Let's see here. We are all familiar with the Watusi, who are known for their men who reach 7 feet in height. These, however, are the exception, but in the dusty records kept by early European settlers in America, there were numerous accountings of graves of men towering 7 to 9 feet tall. 7 to 9 feet tall. And according to early reports by Native Americans, there were whole races of the tall men. Amazingly enough, some of their mummies have been found. We know that some had long red hair, others had long black hair down to their waist. Who are they? Perhaps the Watusi were here before the American Indian as we know them. The fact that the American school student is completely ignorant of these fascinating records is an indictment on the bias of American atheistic archaeology. That's a good point, by the way. That the reason American students are largely ignorant of it. They're largely ignorant of giants in America. They don't even know there was any. Why? Because it destroys evolution. That's why. For the atheist to admit to very tall and ancient races of people is to give credence to the Bible record of ancient giants. Okay, now I'm going to say something to you very clearly. Please listen closely. I do not believe that Indians were here first or before they were the first inhabitants of this land. I don't believe it was their land. I believe there were giants before them. And I think those Indians were allowed to conquer, and they grouped up together, and they conquered some of those giants and starved them out and other things like that. So for them to say, this was our land and the white man stole it, well, who'd you steal it from? Who'd you steal it from? Who'd you fight for it with? You're going to see. You ready? You're going to see. All right. I'm going to skip over to here. Arizona Giant Indians. Coronado, the Spanish explorer, encountered several tribes of giant Indians at the Mexico-Arizona border. He wrote about it. Said we found them. Arkansas's giant Tuscaloosa. When Spanish explorer De Soto came into Arkansas and Mississippi, he encountered a huge chieftain named Tuscaloosa who had a giant son. Tuscaloosa was surrounded by 100 men, all wearing colorful feathered plumes on their heads. They estimated Tuscaloosa to be about 8 feet tall. How about the Catalina Islands, California giant? In the deep sands of the Catalina Islands off the coast of California, several dwarf mammoths have been excavated. Some were apparently roasted in ancient fire pits and allegedly by giant human-like creatures with double rows of teeth. Now, you're going to hear that often. Okay, you're going to hear that often. There are people like all the way over here, 500 miles away, 1,000 miles away, and people over here 1,000 miles away, they're digging around, they find this grave, and guess what? They find these giant skeletons, and then they got double rows of teeth. And that guy says the same thing as that guy 1,000 miles away, and they don't even know each other, never talked to each other, never corroborated a story, never read a book about it, nothing. They just found it. In the 1800s, giants with 2 rows of teeth, red hair, and skull, 3 to 6 times larger than modern man, were found on the Catalina Islands. The dwarf mammoth. See, they don't want to tell you, like, where's all this stuff at? It comes up missing. Michael, that's right. The giant Roman Emperor Maximus was over 8 feet tall. That's correct. He truly was. Lompoc, California giant with 2 rows of teeth. Listen to this. You ready for another one? Near Lompoc, California in 1883, a group of soldiers dug up the skeleton of a man who in life was 12 feet tall. Surrounding the skeleton were giant weapons. But even more interesting was the fact that he had 2 rows of teeth. There it is again. 2 rows of teeth. Some contention by local Indians arose over the remains, and they were not made available for the public to see. It is a sad fact that the skeletons of giant men are almost never displayed publicly. They always find a way to get around it. They always find a way to hide it. Like the Indians don't. I believe that there's 2 reasons why these get hid. Number 1, the Smithsonian, the government, because of the push of evolution. Number 2, the Indians. You know why the Indians hide it? The Indians hide it because they don't want anybody to know that they weren't the first ones here. Off the coast of California, Santa Rosa Island, a giant's remains were found. It had double rows of teeth. These islands tend to be deep layers of sand. There tend to be deep layers of sand there. This probably means it was a post-flood giant. Right? Let's see. We're going to go to more. How about this one? Now, this story is really interesting. This story is really interesting. Giant men known to the Cheyenne. Joe Taylor writes this story. Okay, he tells this story. So this is in his own defense. Okay, or in his own writing. So he is saying this is what happened. I was there. Listen to this. July 19, 2010, I had closed my museum for the day when an elderly man with shoulder-length hair and a younger woman appeared at the door. They appreciated my letting them in, but the privilege was mine. The man was Mr. Eugene Black Bear Sr., who was 80 years old and one of the last pure-blood Cheyenne. He said, and had recently, about 1995, made a movie titled The Last of the Dogmen, based on a true story of a few Indians that escaped the Sand Creek Massacre in 1864. This man was descended from them. His great-grandmother was the one Cheyenne woman who killed General Custer, who didn't listen when they told him to stop killing women and children, so they drilled holes in the ears with an awl so he could hear better in the next world. The conversation was fascinating. I asked Mr. Black Bear if he had ever heard of giants. Giant men? Oh, yes, he had. They had 2 faces, one in the front and one behind. How big were they, I asked. 10 feet, he said. The Cheyenne were in the western states like Wyoming, California, and South Dakota. Now, that sounds pretty crazy, right? But I want you to consider a few things. As for the 2 faces, most would discount that immediately. However, remember Janus, the 2-faced god? I remember seeing this exact art on the frieze on the west side of a building in Hollywood, near Grauman's Chinese Theater. The fact that it was on a prominent building is reminiscent of the placement of this figure on ancient Roman city gates. Some say this was Noah who saw before the flood and after. Martin Luther said Janus was Javan. Don't forget the phenomenon of Siamese twins. Calves, cats, and snakes can be born Siamese twins, where both heads develop but only one body. Is it really unthinkable that there were several of these two-faced giants who were indeed Siamese twins, where one body developed only one head but with two faces? These giants were also known to have 6 toes, 6 fingers, and 2 rows of teeth. It's not impossible. We understand hybrids. We understand hybrids. I mean, we know they're there. The Bible talks about them. They're going to come up out of the pit. A man told me of a race of giants living near Death Valley, and that 2 men who were wandering the desert mountainsides found a series of caves. Inside were such things as large chairs, tables, far too large for normal humans. Death Valley is the Mojave Desert east of Los Angeles, California. It is the lowest and driest place in the Western Hemisphere. In Death Valley, California, in 1947, it was reported in a local newspaper that amateur archaeologists had discovered a skeleton 9 feet tall, who claimed that they found what appeared to be the bones of tigers and dinosaurs with the giant human remains. And Joe Taylor asks, where is all this stuff? Good question. Where is it all? I'd like to know. I'd like to know where it all is. I'll tell you where it is. The Smithsonian, the Vatican, all of it. Lots of good stuff here for you. Lots of good stuff. Man. Giants visit the Georgia Cherokee. Listen to this. James Wofford of Western Cherokee, born 1806 in Georgia, said that his grandmother, born in the mid-1700s, said that the old people told of a group of men twice as tall as them coming to visit the Cherokee from the west with slanting eyes, who the Cherokee called Sunil Kalu, the slanted people. The slanted people. Slant-eyed people, sorry. Slant-eyed people. The Smithsonian has probably excavated some 120,000 graves across America. Hey, can we stop for a second? We don't have time to talk about the Smithsonian directly. Where do you think the artifacts from 120,000 graves across America are? $120,000 graves. In the early reports, the skeleton of giant men were reported. It was later on that they apparently adopted the policy of keeping the discovery of giant men covered up. One excavation of the Dunleth, Illinois mound. Okay, so the Indians know about these mounds. They understand these mounds. They talk about these mounds. They point to them. They're sacred ground to them. They call it. But they fully admit that there aren't any Indians buried in those. Well, they don't fully admit it now, but they have in the past. Because there's something else in there. They're not red men in there. That's their words. Dunleth, Illinois mound, about 1890 to 1891, titled Smithsonian Excavation. Number 5, yielded a skeleton 8 feet tall. In Pike County, a man over 7 feet long was found. Why don't they show these bodies? Why don't they show these skeletons? I mean, the skeletons, why don't they show them? Because they know that evolution is a lie. That's why. And their theory, the evidence contradicts their theory. the evidence of giant men contradicts their theory. So they will not show it. Makes sense, doesn't it? Oh, let's look at some scripture here real quick. Hang on a second. I'm going to have you turn somewhere. Second Samuel chapter 21, verse number 12. In Gath, where was a man of great stature, and had on every hand 6 fingers, and on every foot 6 toes, 24 in number. He also was born to the giant. And when he defied Israel, Jonathan, the son of Shimeah, the brother of David, slew him. These 4 were born to the giant in Gath, and fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his servants. Now you're going to hear that again. These people are going to say, hey, so I found this body. The thing's got the skeleton, 6 fingers and 6 toes and double rows of teeth. Yep. Brewersville, Indiana Mound. Here we go. Here's where the giants were buried. And that's why 120,000 of these sites have been stolen. Listen, near Brewersville, Indiana in 1879, from a stone burial mound, the remains of a skeleton 9 feet 8 inches long was excavated. A mica necklace was around its neck. Reported in the Indianapolis News, November 10th, 1975. They report it in the newspaper. Nobody wants to talk about it. See, I think if you and I did a search, I should try to get a subscription to newspaper.com. You can buy a subscription to it for research. And I should get a subscription to it and search by word, giant skeleton, whatever, all that kind of stuff. It has like all the newspapers across America. Because I believe we would find a lot more sightings of things in there that a lot more people wrote about and said, hey, this happened. I think that would happen. So here's a guy that finds 9 feet 8 inches tall. That's Goliath. He found a Goliath. Well, they found giant women. I'm going to talk about them. They found them. They're 8 feet tall, 9 feet tall. Their husbands were like 12 to 15 feet tall. Mm-hmm. Kansas City, Kansas. In 1877, now here's the Indians again. Here's a mound. 1877, in a mound near Kansas City, Kansas, Mr. W.H.R. Likens found skull bones of great size and thickness. Think about that. All right, 60 thumbs up on there. Let's get that thumbs up going. There's 84 people on right now. Let's get the thumbs up there. Share this on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, everywhere they kick me off of. Email it to your friends. Email the link to your friends. Amen. Let's get this out here. Okay, are you ready for some more? I'm telling you, These Indians know, and they're not making stuff up. They know what's there. And the evidence just doesn't lie. It's right in front of their face. But this is suppressed because they don't want you to know this. Why? Because Satan wants you to believe in evolution. He doesn't want you to know this. I mean, you can't possibly, there's actually giants. Well, yeah. God said there was. God's word lists them. How about home state of Minnesota? In Warren, Minnesota, 1883, 10 skeletons of both males and females were excavated from a mound. It was said that they were of gigantic size. The find was reported in the St. Paul Pioneer Press, May 23rd, 1883. May 23rd, 1883. Look it up. St. Paul Pioneer Press. In Minnesota, possibly in Clearwater in 1888, 7 skeletons 7 to 8 feet tall were reported on in the St. Paul Pioneer Press, June 29th, 1888. Another account, but probably the same find, says that in Clearwater, Minnesota, skeletons of 7 giants were excavated in mounds, that they had receding foreheads and complete double dentation. Dentation? Whatever. Receding foreheads, big foreheads, right? And 2 rows of teeth. Well, kind of hard to argue with that, isn't it? I mean, they found it. I don't know what they'd lie for. They weren't Baptist fundamentalist Christians trying to prove the Bible true, were they? No, you know what they were like? They were peeing their pants. That's what they were like. They're digging around this mound, and all of a sudden they see a body, and they keep digging, and that sucker's 9 feet long, and they're like, whoa! What is that? Because that's what you'd be doing. That's what I'd be doing. Right? That's what I'd be doing. Seven giants right there. They're not lying. They dug them up in those mounds. But now you can't touch those mounds because they're supposed to be sacred Indian burial grounds. Well, that's the little deal I think they made with the government and the Smithsonian. It was in the best interest of the Indians to make that deal. You know why? So they could keep their land or a portion of whatever their burial grounds were or whatever. They didn't keep their land, obviously, all of it, but there were some spots of it. So they could say they were the indigenous people. They were the people from that area or whatever. To that area. And you know what? The Smithsonian, they like that deal too because it hid the truth. In Lake Coronis, Minnesota, on the Beckley Farm, the skeleton of a huge man was uncovered at Moose Island and also at Pine City, Minnesota. Hey, I know where those are at, I think. Sort of. Pine City. I think it's up north. More bones of giant men were discovered. Reported in the St. Paul Globe, August 12th, 1896. These are all too small to have been mastodons. However, a word of caution, in some cases, bones of mastodons have been misidentified as giant men bones. But since many mastodons as well as mammoths have been found since white men settled in these states, it is likely that the people knew the difference, especially since many of them are in mounds or in places obviously made by man. You could tell the mounds were placed by men. Or something. 84 people on, probably 12 people on the chat. That's probably what that means. But 67 thumbs up. Good deal. All right, you ready for some more? I'm ready for some more because here's the thing. I like to basically just inundate you with all of it and just throw it all out there and say, see, it's not just like one or two. It's a bunch. Clearwater, Minnesota. In June 29th, 1888, the St. Paul paper carried a story about Charles Pinkerton in Minnesota. 1888 was digging a cellar or a well on sort of a knoll for his house when he hit the well-preserved skeletons of people 7 feet and some giants of 8 feet tall, buried with their heads down. The teeth and jaws were sound, he said, but not like the teeth of the people of his day. He estimated them to be at least 200 years old, about mid-1600s, because there's a stump of a tree 2 feet wide on top of the mound. I'm going to get to Ohio. I haven't got there yet. Just hang on. I'm pretty sure we cover Ohio here in a little while. Going state by state, giant hunting. Chasing down the American Indians and their stories. Stories of the Delaware and the Sioux Indians tell of a race of cowardly giants along the Allegheny River who were driven out of their strong walled cities by the Iroquois Confederacy. Fleeing to Minnesota, they were killed off by the Sioux. Yep. Don't tell her. Have her read the Bible. It's right there. Have her read the Bible. It's God's word. God said it. Mississippi, red-haired giants with horns. Mississippi was home to the Choctaw Indians, who said they were invaded by a giant race of red and blonde-haired white men with sharp clubs and axes, probably of metal, the armor of thick skin. The Choctaw called them the Nahulo. The giants with horns. As one writer suggested, they sounded like the Norsemen Vikings with horned helmets. The Nahulo. Mississippi River giants. In about 1518, Alonso Alvarez de Pineda discovered giants on the Mississippi River. Missouri giant, 25 feet tall. A mound in Kansas City, Missouri, held the remains of a man and tracks 25 to 30 feet tall. Unfortunately, most of these hundreds of mounds were dug out into the 1800s and much of the bones destroyed or carted off to basements of major institutions, never to be seen again. Mark Pinham, number 69, Atlantis Rising, page 67. They don't want to tell the truth. A Choctaw story of the giants. Oh boy, I still got tons to go. Good deal. A Choctaw story of the giants. Choctaw. Some stories challenge our modern biases. This is one. After crossing the Mississippi River, the Choctaw Indians encountered a race of white giants who came from the east and used the mammoth as beasts of burdens. The mammoths were herded and broke down the forests. Though they were peaceful farmers, they had been cannibals. Having been a powerful people, they were now dwindling and disappeared when the Choctaw came. Did the Choctaw make up all this? I apologize for any evolutionist who's having a coronary over this, but are you calling the Choctaw liars? Well, I mean, I don't see why they'd lie. Sounds like they didn't like what they saw. Many of them were scared. Fierce warriors still, but intimidated. That's intimidating, right? It's very intimidating. I don't know if you're walking along and you saw a 9-foot dude and 8-foot, 9-foot dude, and he comes up to you and you're like 5'8". Montana is known for its vast layers of dinosaurs. Joe Taylor says, I've excavated several times, several sites there. But just as interesting and infinitely rare, a 9 feet tall next to a woman almost as tall. The excavation was done by Professor S. Farr. So, Montana, they find this giant man and this giant woman. Well, there's how you know that they had babies. 9 foot tall dude. Wow. 9 foot tall. Big man. Big thing. You know, all these examples that these Indians have found, that these are Indians. Remember, on Monday's broadcast, we talked about everything, like everywhere, like white people and all these other people that saw these giants, right? We talked about them and they saw giants. Now we're dealing with a different race of people altogether, and we're dealing with mounds. So in these mounds, there's giants that are buried in there. And I'll tell you, there's a religion that goes along with this, and I haven't got it all figured out yet. But I've found online some of the stones of the mounds. And it appears, we're not going to talk about the religion today. We'll talk about that another day. But it appears to be very similar. It appears to be very similar to the Egyptians, to the dark arts, the dark magic, right? When you look at the things that I've been looking at. Anyway, so I'll look at it. You know, that's really unfortunate that somebody has to be a pervert. I'm glad. Okay, you got him. That's too bad. Anyway. Wicked. Anyway, sad times we live in, you know. America in this world is so wicked and vile. Yep. Praise the Lord for the moderators. Thank God for them. Glad they're here so I can stay to the business at hand. Amen. And you keep it. If they put something on there, you just get them off there. All right. But anyway, so we're seeing it's these mounds, and there's a religion that there's something to do with the religion. It's being taught. Let's go to Lovelock, Nevada. Giants with long red hair. For years, I have heard of a long red-haired giants of Lovelock, Nevada. The photos available were difficult to get an accurate idea of their dimension, but a soldier in the Army, Mr. Pete Mansour, in 2010 was able to look at some of the giant skulls and get good photographs. Most of the giant mummified bodies were apparently taken to the Smithsonian or to the Nevada Historical Society. Oh, well, there we go again. Every time there's some evidence of something, who creeps in? The Smithsonian, the historical societies, which is a link to the Smithsonian Institute, and boom, there you go. We're done. Several people have told me over the years that the Smithsonian was supposed to have excavated 69 giant mummified humans with long red hair in 1911. So they took 70 of them out, and you can't find them anywhere. As if they're hard enough to find anyway. I mean, you're not really looking for them, but I mean, if you were somewhere, if you were trying to find it, you're not going to find it because they get on the scene. It's okay. Let me give you an example. When there's a 9/11 style inside job thing going on, when there's one of those going on, they get to the scene, they quarantine it off, they grab all the evidence, they take it all, and they're done. You never find anything. Right? And then everything's gone. Well, that's what happens with this. That's the same thing that's happening with this. They find the information. They find the information. They take the information. And we never see it again. All the evidence is taken. And then it's gone. Amy, the book is called Giants Against Evolution by Joe Taylor, Mont Blanco, Texas. And he's a good guy, Joe Taylor. So I don't know if he's got anything on this copy. Mount Blanco Press. Let's see. His phone number is 806-675-7777. Okay? And if you call him and order that, that'd be good. He's a good guy. I don't get paid for it. I'm just trying to be a blessing to people. All right. So here we go. 69 mummified humans with long red hair in 1911. The scientists were apparently not denying that their remains were large men, but they explained that the red hair was due to the fact that they were buried in bat guano, which had turned black hair red. I asked Cheyenne, Eugene Black Bear, 80 years old at the time, about the story, and he said the men were cannibals and bad men. The normal Indians, the Paiute, told the giants to stop their bad ways, but they wouldn't, so the Paiute killed them. Interesting. So the Paiute say they told these giants, you quit doing that. You quit your bad stuff. They were cannibals. You quit eating people. Right? And then after that, boom, they killed him. Mr. Henry Johnson talked to the folks of Lovelock, and it was told that the Paiute caught the giants in the cave and started a big fire in it and suffocated them. Well, that's one way to kill a bunch of giants, is to find them in a cave, close up the cave, and burn them all up. Suppose I'd probably done the same thing if I had them chasing me like that. If I knew they were going to eat me, hey, if you had a 9-foot dude getting ready to eat you, you'd do some inventive things too to get away from him, wouldn't you? I know I would. Mr. Black Bear said that these men were also 10 feet tall. Other reports say they're 7 feet tall. Perhaps they were both. There were some 10 and there were some 7. Who knows? And then again, other reports say that the Nevada Historical Society no longer considers them giants. Oh, yeah, after the Smithsonian gets a hold of it. Hey, check this out. Check this out. Every time you get initial reports, right, of certain things, there's always like 2 shooters and people. You have like 10 eyewitnesses say, oh, yeah, there was one dude there, then there was another dude there, and this happened, and they were 2, and then like 3 days later, it's like the whole report changes. It's like, well, there was one lone gunman. It was Rambo, and he took on the whole town. But the story always changes. Always. Mutilated Bruce, that is absolutely right. Grand Canyon is off limits. I mean, I don't know that it was off limits, but that would be the reason why it is. You bet it is. You can't go digging around there probably and looking at stuff. No. Why? Because they found so many giants in there. They don't want anybody seeing them. Not at all. The lady at the Humboldt Museum in Winnemucca, Nevada, told Ian Juby is a creation scientist, that one skull they had was 12 inches tall. Right? 12 inches tall. Right? Grand Canyon Giants researcher Bob Gibson says that the daughter of the Indian chief, Winnemucca, wrote down all these stories at the time of the giants. Apparently, much of Nevada was a giant lake, Lahontan Sea, with a huge population of Indians. These giants were said to be very violent. This seems to be a pattern in the stories of giant men. Well, we always hear, we'll continue talking about the Paiute too here. That story's not finished yet. We're almost the top of our hour here. But the Paiute Indians, we'll finish with this, and then we'll take a break from it just for a few minutes, and we'll hit it back again. The Paiute Indians of that area in Nevada, whose average height was much more than 5 feet tall, told of their conflicts with the race of the red-haired giant men, who were driven from Nevada by the alliance of several Indian tribes. The giant red-headed men were called the Sai-Tekas. Speculation is that there is a tie-in to the 7 giants, the 10-foot-tall mummies found in Kossuth, Iowa. Stone Monument, who also had red hair. At one time, the Kossuth County chapter of the State Historical Society had 3 robes made entirely of very long strands of red hair. Accordingly to John Williams' report, DNA samples were taken from the red hair and the mummies to see if there was a relationship. Here are the skulls of Lovelock. Let's see if I can get you a close-up here. These are the skulls of Lovelock. So we'll take a break from these examples here for a second. We're going to get into more Indian mounds and more things that have been more giant finds there. But here's the thing. These giants are always bitter enemies of God's people, of people in general. It's like their hand is against every man. They're angry. They're evil. They don't like anybody. They especially don't like the people of God, right? And you know, they're very angry. They're very mean. They're just satanic. They eat people. They just, you know, somebody asked the question, do I think, or ask somebody else, but do I think they're going to appear again? Yes. but I think it's going to be through genetic modification. I think they're going to splice the genes. I think they could be clones and things of that nature. Genetic cloning and things about that. So, absolutely. You know, I really do believe that's probably going to happen. You know, that they're going to be there. Well, I mean, today on the news, they're already making chimeras in China. I was just going to say that they're mixing humans and monkeys today, like they're breeding them. Why this was so wants all, Aaron wants all the bones and wants everything to it. That's why. That's the reason why. Okay, hey, make sure that you go to opbconline.org and subscribe to us there. I have to check that list. Right now I'm emailing out from my own list. But if you want to get on my own list right now, because I don't have the other one down, it's pastorcooley@icloud.com. You can send there. You can send me your email address there, and you can stay in touch with us in case I get kicked off of YouTube, like I did Facebook. In case I get kicked off of YouTube, I can just stream from Sermon Audio Live. And that's what I'm going to do, sermonaudio.com/Pastor Cooley. For all the newest sermons and things of that nature that you can get, you go to sermonaudio.com/Pastor Cooley for all the archives, for extensive teaching on the Giants and from the Bible, the 3-part series I did on the Giants and from the Word of God and everything like that. You can go there. Just type in Giants. If you want an entire study of Genesis chapter 6, just type in the series Genesis chapter 6, and you will find an entire series there. What are you sorry about, Superfest? I don't know what you're sorry about. Like Goliath cursing, I don't know. Okay. Maybe I'm missing something. Have you ever done any research on the ancient empire of Tartaria, commonly known as Tartary? I have not, but I am going to do a little bit of digging around. There's a few things that I'm looking at. I've got to order a book set. I wish I didn't have to order the 2-volume set, but I'm going to have to order it. So, yeah, I got to order it. Anyway, but Mike, I don't know. I don't know. I've never been threatened to be kicked off of Sermon Audio, so I don't know. I don't think as if I've done anything for them to do that. You know, I pretty much just teach historical Bible doctrine for the most part and talk about current events. So I don't see why they would kick me off there. To be honest with you, I don't know why they would. But I suppose they could if they wanted to, but I don't see why they would. You know, from that standpoint, I don't really think they would. But you know, you never know. Anything can happen. But I don't know. I mean, I know Scott Johnson got kicked off of there, but I think he got kicked off because he was doing stupid stuff. Like he was just attacking people and stuff. And I don't really do that. So I don't have time for that. There's too much other things to bring out than for me to do that. So I don't know. You know, I who knows? But if it happens, it happens. So we'll broadcast from our website. We'll figure something out. But we'll keep going no matter what. I'll buy a Blog Talk Radio spot. I'll just buy it and put it up on there and do Blog Talk Radio. So I'll keep serving the Lord that way, along with pastoring this church and taking care of my family and street preaching and all kinds of stuff. Oh, I know YouTube is going to ban me. That's why I'm trying to get you folks to email me at pastorcooley@icloud.com and send me your email address so I can stay in touch with you in case they do kick me off. You know, I'm not watching your video. I don't know who you are. Stop spamming my stuff. Not watching your video. Carl, I don't know how you keep getting kicked off of YouTube. What are you doing anyway? Who are you yelling at? Carl's probably calling people names so they're kicking him off. That's probably what's happening. Yeah, I probably should make up a backup YouTube channel. That's probably not a bad idea. I think I'll do that. I don't know how to do that, but I think I'll do that. 11 a.m. Central Time to 1 p.m. Central Time. 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Time. And so be there Friday. Not sure what I'm going to talk about. Oh, that's a good idea. Okay. Maybe I should do that. Okay. I am a independent Baptist, but I'm not an independent fundamental Baptist. I am an independent Baptist, historical, separate Baptist. That's what I would consider myself. Is your church an incorporated 501c3? No, we are not a 501c3. We are not a 508 church. We do not have a tax identification number. We are not a nonprofit organization. See? But you are a dispensational preacher. I would say sort of, but not in the system of dispensationalism. That system. Because I'm post-trib. Free Palestine. It's going to be free one day. There's no such thing as Palestine. Anyway, we're not going to talk about the Jews. We're not going to talk about Palestine, Israel, although I'm not afraid to talk about it. That's not what this broadcast is about. This is the giant day. It is. I just took a break for a few minutes and getting right back into it here. It is about giants. That is true. Feels like old baptism. I don't believe they can. Now, that or they're too scared to, one of the two, or they will in the future. Don't know. Good question, though. All right, back into it here. Back into it. Nevada, the Nevada Humboldt Lake Giant. Near Lovelock, Nevada, in the Humboldt Lake bed, there 2 huge skeletons were excavated. One measuring 10 feet tall appeared to have been wrapped in a gum-covered fabric similar to the Egyptian method. A second skeleton was 8.5 feet tall. Reported in the Review Minor, June 19th, 1931. 1931. Again, another independent newspaper published a story. Yosemite Valley, Nevada tall woman and baby. In the Yosemite Valley, Nevada, in 1885, the remains were found of a 6 foot 8 inch tall woman A Mr. Bob Gibson reported that she was holding a baby that was almost as tall as a modern man, which means that her husband was probably big. Miners found the mummified bodies in a cave hidden behind a rock wall. Yosemite Valley is a glacial valley in the Yosemite National Park in the Western Sierra Nevada. Excuse me. A woman 7 feet tall is tall. He speculates that her brothers were probably 8 or 9 feet tall. Those California gold rush miners in the mid-1800s dug up a lot of very interesting human remains and artifacts. Many of their stories were collected in the book Forbidden. Get that book. Forbidden Archaeology. I want to check that out, actually. Virginia City, Nevada. On July 20th, 2000. A man named Charles Hankley of Temecula, California, stated in an interview that in the early 1970s, he was vacationing in Virginia City, Nevada. He went to a small private museum where he saw 2 skeletons about 9 feet tall in a glass-covered pit. The owner found them in a cave nearby. About 10 years later, he stopped in again, but the owner said someone from the government had taken the skeletons and would not return them. He said the government came in and took them and wouldn't give them back. New York, USA. Near Rodman, Rutland, New York State, in the 1800s, giant skeletons 7 to 8 feet tall were found. We don't often think of fossils of giant men when we hear about New York State, but they were there. So were the mastodons. It is not a well-known fact, but some of the first dinosaur bones were found in the New York and New Jersey area. Cattaraugus County, Conewango Valley, New York. In the 1800s, many graves of tall people and giants were unearthed from mounds. So here we have those mounds again in Chautauqua County near Casadaga Creek, turning up a skeleton 7 feet 5 inches. 7 feet 5 inches. From a very old mound near Casadaga Lake came several more large skeletons, including one nearly 9 feet tall. So you have these 7 feet tall ones, and then you have 9 foot tall ones. It's interesting to me how those numbers keep coming. 7 feet, 9 feet, which means to me that there was probably 9 foot, and then as time went on, they shrunk down to 7 feet. Something happened. Something changed. Right, but Andre the Giant wasn't a healthy man. These men were warriors. They were like 1,000 pounds. They weren't like 500 pounds. They were like 9 feet tall, 900 pounds. Difference. In 1851, under a stump near the town of Carrollton, Fort Limestone, a mass of large human bones was found. One probably stood 8 foot tall, near the town of Penyon, which is still farm country. A local doctor excavated several skeletons 7 feet tall from a conical burial mound by the Cayuga Lake in Orleans County, 1.5 miles west of Shelby Center. And it in what was described as an earth fort. Skeletons 7 and 8 feet tall were unearthed. Another giant was found in the town of Aurora. When a Charles P. Pearson was digging a cellar in 1849 in Allegheny County, a railroad construction disturbed a circular mound, uncovering very large human bones. Strange skulls were dug up in a mound on Tonawanda Island near Buffalo, being described as having portentous, protruding lower jaws and a canine forehead. I'm wondering if these were or the were they hybrids? We know one thing, that those fallen angels knew how to do testing, genetic testing. We can kind of see that with the sons of God, the daughters of men. I think the use of hybrids, things like that. Riverwind don't talk about nothing. Riverwind don't talk about nothing. I watched his entire video and I kept squeezing through it, and all he pushed was Hebrew roots. He didn't really talk about anything. It was that video was like a trap for Hebrew roots. That's what I got out of that video. Anyway. In 1873, the Daily Telegraph of Toronto, Canada, reported that 200 human skeletons, 9 feet tall, were discovered 40 miles west of Niagara Falls in northeastern North America, in New York, USA, and Ontario, Canada. See that? 9 feet, 200 human skeletons, 9 feet tall. I mean, are all, okay, let me stop. Okay, so are all the white people that found them, right? Are all the white people that found them, the settlers across the country that were digging basements and digging up ground to build houses and doing all kinds of stuff, they found all these? Are they lying? Are all these independent Indian stories and things that they found in mounds and all those other things, are they lying? Are they all making it up and none of them talk to each other? Are they all just making it up? Right? They're not lying. And this Bible is true because God's word said it. God's word said it. And we can believe God's word. Without any of these stories, by faith, I believe what God said. I don't need these stories. I believe by faith, but it's unbelievable, awesome that we have all these findings. And the sad thing is that nobody knows about them. But they should. And that's what we're here to do. To get this out to as many people as we can. So we can tell them about this so they know. That's what's important. Because it gives credence to the word of God. It just reiterates the same message. And the message of fallen man and his dire need for Jesus Christ to save his soul. Because we are fallen creatures, dead in trespasses and sins, and only Christ can save. Only Christ can forgive your sins and cleanse you of unrighteousness. Only Jesus can make you whole. Only he can forgive your sins and wash you in his own blood. All right. In Ashland County, Ohio. Somebody asked me about Ohio. In Ashland County, Ohio, from an earthen mound, Mr. George W. Hill, MD, excavated a skeleton of unusual size. This was from a note in his files here. Brush Creek Township, Ohio. A mound some 64 by 35 feet and 8 feet high was excavated in Brush Creek Township, Ohio. J.F. Everhart officiating. In a sort of clay coffin was the skeleton of a woman 8 feet tall with a child 3.5 feet tall. In the same mound was a male 9 feet tall with a female 8 feet tall. In a third grave was another male 9 feet 4 inches with a female 8 feet tall. 9 feet 4 inches. In others were 7 skeletons. The smallest was 7 feet, with others 10 feet high. In height, 10 feet in height. A stone tablet was found with engravings indicating they might have been sun worshipers. So here's a key to who they are. Sun worshipers, Ra, Egyptian, Babylonian mystery religions. That's what they worshipped. Yep. A stone tablet. Okay, the tablet was sent to Cincinnati, Ohio. I ask, where is it now? Scientific American, August 14th, 1880, page 106. Also in the Kansas City Review of Science. But where is it? Where's all the evidence? Why is it gone? But all the newspapers wrote about it, but nobody of any influence cares. Because they have a vested interest to cover up. Why? Because they don't want this book to be true. They don't want this book to be true. Because if this book is true, then they have to repent and believe the gospel. They have to turn from their sin and believe the Lord Jesus Christ. They have to believe the gospel. They have to admit they're a fallen creature, dead in trespasses and sins. And Jesus Christ is coming back again with great power and glory. And he is King of Kings and he is Lord of Lords. They don't want that to be true. They are fallen creatures, like all of us were until we were born again. We still have that fallen nature inside of us, but we have the Word of God. Some of these people, Satan doesn't want this truth out. Or he's going to pervert it when it does come out. And how it's going to be perverted is those UFOs and those aliens came down and they made it, and that's where these giants came from, which is true in some ways. Because they were the sons of God and the daughters of men. And they're going to do it again. They're going to do it again. All right, some more. Near Toledo, Ohio in 1895, from a mound, 20 skeletons were discovered who had jaws and teeth twice as large as present-day people. This site, too, had odd or curiously wrought hieroglyphics on large bowls placed beside each skeleton. The bodies were all seated and facing east. They would have been 12 feet tall. I believe they're in UFOs, but I believe they're devils. They're fallen angels. And I absolutely believe that they are there to seduce and destroy the people of God, destroy people and get them to believe in the Antichrist kingdom that is coming. I absolutely believe that. And because the Bible states that there's some interesting things with chariots and with fallen angels and many, many, many other things. Right? Well, James, people are going to call them aliens, but the Bible calls them fallen angels or devils. But we don't care what you call them. We know what they are. We know what they are. They're ants culminating into the coming of that kingdom. Right. We don't, I mean, I don't know. Lots of people saw lots of things, but anyway. All right, let's keep going here. Boy, isn't it interesting? Those bodies were facing the east, 12 feet tall. Some weird stuff, man. Some weird stuff. Right, James. Not another planet from the fourth dimension. Right. All right. Giant man in copper armor, Ohio Mound. Ready? A massive man was excavated from a large burial mound measuring 500 feet by 200 feet by 28 feet high in 1891. Listen to this. I thought this was fascinating. Listen up to this. I thought this was really interesting. Listen to this. Wearing copper armor. A lot of these guys have this, they find them, these giants, and they find them, they have copper armor on. With copper armor on his head, jaws, arms, chest, and stomach, with wooden antlers encased in copper. His mouth was filled with immense pearls. Around his neck was a necklace of bare teeth inlaid with pearls. Besides the giant man lay the skeleton of a woman. They were at the depth of 14 feet. Where did they go? The burning tree mastodon. You know, I'm going to save some of this for giant creatures that have been found. So I'm going to mark this for that because I'm not going to read you all those, okay? Because I'm going to save those because I'm going to do one on giant creatures and things that they found, tools and artifacts and all kinds of stuff, right? How about this? It says, though, with these mastodons, I won't read you that story because I'll read to you later, but it has also been butchered and skinned. They found a mastodon, but did men 6 feet tall do that? I don't think so. Those things were huge. The hide would weigh over a ton. In another mound in Ohio that was excavated in the 1800s, women who were 8 feet tall were found buried with men 9 feet tall and single men 10 feet tall. Picture, if you will, a dozen or so of these giants, with perhaps some of them up to 15 feet tall, and you have the people capable of skinning and utilizing a 2,000-pound hide. 2,000-pound hide. I'm going to save this for giant creatures, but I'll now move to another part of Ohio. In the late 1800s, scientists dug into one of the many dirt mounds in Ohio. In one large mound, the Brush Creek Township, Ohio, the skeletons of women 8 feet tall were found buried next to men 9 feet tall. More than that, single male skeletons that were 10 feet tall were excavated. Just consider that perhaps as the Pawnee said, there were men 15 feet tall in Ohio as well. And a picture a dozen of these giants coming into the scene of the dying mastodon. Now you have the man large enough to utilize a skin that thick and that large. Is that what happened? They dug into those mounds and they found them right there. Yep. Think about it. That's some scary stuff. Some scary, scary, scary stuff right there. You know, I thank God for all the resources that God has allowed me to have. I have traveled somewhat of the country a little bit. I don't have preached in Texas. I've preached in Missouri. I think I've preached in Virginia, but I don't know. Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, but Missouri. But I've been around and I've looked at I've gotten resources from all over the place. And the Lord's allowed me to gather those things together and everything like that. And to be able to feed people with it. And I think it's important to do that. Because there's a lot of things that people don't want to talk about that are taboo to them. And I mean, this stuff, these hundreds of people that have found these things, individual people that have found these things are not making this up. They've all found them in different places, their land, in different mounds, all this stuff. But it's being hidden and kept from you for a reason. For the general public, they don't want you to know about it. The Hopewell Indians, who were the same size as the Europeans, said they didn't build the mounds, nor did they know who did. Zanesville Giant. Near Zanesville, Ohio in 1880, another skeleton of enormous dimensions was excavated from an earthen mound in a clay coffin with a sandstone slab, presumably as a lid, inscribed with hieroglyphics. I would love to see those hieroglyphics. I'm going to do some studying on that, folks. I'm going to come back to you sometime, Lord willing, in the next couple weeks, whenever the Lord allows me to jump on it, and I am going to find some of these things. I want to know some things about that. I don't know why, I just do. All right, let's see, where are we? The excavation was done by Dr. J.F. Everhart, reported in the American Antiquarian, Volume 3, 1880, page 61. Zanesville is near Newark, Ohio. A mastodon was excavated at Zanesville and at Johnstown, not far from Newark. That was hidden land long ago. Wow, yeah, you never know, Amy. You never know what's there. Hey, if you haven't thumbs up the video, do that now. Share it. Share it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Go to opbconline.org and subscribe to us there, or send me an email, pastorcooley@icloud.com, and subscribe to my private list there so I have it and everything like that. So Marion County, Ohio, because YouTube's going to kick me off sometime. It's going to happen. Facebook already has. And YouTube will, but I want to be able to broadcast to you all live and continue to do that. So I'll do it on sermonaudio.com/Pastor Cooley. All right. By the way, if you have any books or anything like that, and you find interesting things on subjects and you don't want the book or whatever, but you think it might be a benefit to me for study wise and all this other stuff, then send it. You can send it to me. You know, if it's something like along these lines or mound builders or any of those kind of things, feel free to send it to me. I'll take a look at it as best I can and try to decipher, you know, through some of that stuff. So anyway, I'm just throwing that out there just in case, because who knows if somebody's got something that's out there that they found, or some old newspapers or whatever it is. You know, all that stuff. So anyway, Amy says, I emailed you your Disney sermon to all of our homeschooling co-op families. They were not pleased with me. Well, James, that's a good question. Let me finish up this and maybe I'll answer that. You're gonna have to remind me though. Man, how much more do I have? Okay, I got to keep going. Paw Paw Creek, Ohio. 3 skeletons 8 feet long were found in Paw Paw Creek, Ohio in the 1800s by men digging a bridge foundation. Excuse me. The Hopi, Iroquois, and Cherokee knew of giants. Listen to this story. In researching the subject of giants, it is obvious that many, if not all, of the Native American tribes knew about them. The Hopi of Arizona, the Iroquois of the Ohio Valley, and the Cherokee of the southern United States are some. It is also obvious that this knowledge has not been taught to American school children. Furthermore, there are a lot of things that the Indians told the white man when he got here that were either ignored by academia or has been purged from our higher educational system. For instance, they told of living mastodons and giant sloth, the great wind that may be what filled the river in West Texas in one storm and may have killed off the Anasazi, that they saw the Rocky Mountains rise, and some of them, like the Comanche, were the descendants of some tribe of the Simians who came here only 2,500 years ago, they said. A lot of blame can be laid on religious-like devotion to Darwin's doctrines. So some of them believed they were descendants of people over in Israel. Do I believe that? Probably not, but I don't know. I wasn't there. Right? Oklahoma giant footprint in sandstone. 3 close friends, Don Yeager, Henry Johnson, and Lon Patterson, went to the supposed human track on the border of Oklahoma and Kansas. It was about 12 inches deep. So he talks about this. He's not sure about it. He doesn't know that he recommends it, so I won't even read it to you. Anyway, Gasterville, Pennsylvania, a tall skeleton. Near Gasterville, Pennsylvania, a large mound. There it is. Those mounds, those Indians do about all those mounds on their sacred grounds. A large mound was opened, and inside was a vault containing a skeleton 7 feet 2 inches tall. There were inscriptions carved on the vault. Due to the size of the mound and the vault, it makes you wonder if the individual was not an important woman, since the height of just over 7 feet is not nearly as tall as many other giant skeletons, presumably male. Report in the American Antiquarian, Volume 7, 1885, page 521. An 8-foot skeleton was found in a mound in Ellsburg, Pennsylvania, near Wellsville, New York, in 1886. Men with horns in Pennsylvania? Now, I found this interesting. In 1886, from a mound of Sayre, Bradford County, Pennsylvania, near Elmira, New York, dozens of oddly skulled skeletons of men 7 feet tall, with some having horns protruding from their skulls 2 inches above their eyebrows, were excavated by a Pennsylvania state historian and others who turned them over to the American Investigating Museum in Philadelphia. Oh. The bones were later reported lost, end quote. I cannot verify the source of the horn skull pictured above. He has a picture of it, but he can't verify it. Impossible, do you say? Did you know some horses have horns? Mr. Chubb's horse, used for pulling a wagon in New York City in the 1930s, had horns. Some fossil rodents had horns, and some cows are known to have horns on their noses. At least one of the gods, Cronus of the ancient world, is portrayed with horns. I'm going to save this one for giant creatures. So we'll save that one. I'm going to bring you some on giant creatures as well. So the Pawnee and South Dakota giants. The Pawnee were some of the western United States tribes of South Dakota and elsewhere. Wild Bill Cody, one of the more colorful Old West cowboys, after his days of fighting Indians, started touring with them, reenacting cowboys. One very interesting story he told stands out. The Pawnee told him that there used to be men 15 feet tall. So that corroborates the other things that Indians used to tell and some of the graves of very large beings that were found. And they could run down buffalo, he said, and pull their necks off. And they had a lot of stories, but who knows how much of it's true, how much of it isn't. But they still talk about it. South Dakota giants, 12 feet tall. Native American people have a different perspective on many things that are puzzling to white people. White paleontologists have been digging up the bones of dinosaurs and other animals all over the western states every year since the 1870s. Renowned fossil collector Charles Sternberg, the champion of turn-the-century sophisticated white upper-class Easterners, was considered to be crazy by the Indians, who left him alone to his crazy work of digging up bones of dead animals. Anytime I am asked to excavate dinosaurs in the western states where there is Indian land, I always check to see if the property is owned by one of the tribes. If so, a whole different protocol has to be observed. Knowing this, while on a dinosaur dig in South Dakota in 2009, it was not surprising to me to learn that some Lakota tribesmen had excavated 3 giant 12-foot tall skeletons, and they didn't want to show them to anyone. Why, I asked. The Lakota woman explained, because they were not Indians. Yeah, they weren't Indians. No, we don't want to do that. They're not Indians. I wish I could say I knew why, but I suspect that they were buried with metal swords or armor or other artifacts not used by the Indian people of that era. Another 12-foot tall man was excavated by an Indian named John Fasthorse, who lived east of the Grand Valley, South Dakota in 1931. What happened to the remains? From the Lemon Leader and Grand Valley Herald, October 29th, 1931. I'm going to show you this picture here. That's the article. See that? That's the article from the newspaper. It's a clipping. It's a picture of it. That Indian wasn't making that up. Somewhere in the northern states is a place called the Graveyard of the Giant Mandans. An article in the Scientific American 1883 gave the quote of an old Indian man when asked what his people knew of the ancient graveyards of giants. He responded, "Me know nothing about them. They were here before the red man." Did you hear that? I said, me don't know. They were here before the red man. Well, then how did we steal their land? How did we steal their land? The white man came and stole their land. Who'd you steal it from? Those giants were here before you were. Well, that's an inconvenient truth we just won't talk about now, will we? Tall people of Tennessee. Skeletons of giants and men under 8 feet were recorded by John Haywood in his The Natural and Aboriginal History of Tennessee. In Williams County, Tennessee in 1821, there were stone graves found containing large bones. In White County, Tennessee, skeletons averaging 7 feet tall were found in what was described as an ancient fortification. Farwell, Texas, John near was site. Story of a man 12 feet tall, excavated at Farwell, Texas, was told to me by Leon Watson from Farwell, who said the huge man's bones were found on the far western edge of Texas. It may have been written about in the local paper, but no report was available. No one knows how big the people were who killed all the mammoths and great bison over the Clovis, New Mexico archaeological site nearly, but it just might be that they were giants. How tall is a 12-foot tall man to us? Big. Big. Post-Texas giant. Buried with man 3 feet tall. I don't know how that happened, but that'd be weird. In 2000, I was contacted by a cowboy named James Ratliff who wanted to tell me his story. In 1955, he was a junior in high school and lived near Double Mountains, not far from Post, Texas. That year, he found the grave of a giant man. He and the professor from Texas Tech in Lubbock, Texas, who was an American Indian, excavated the giant. The professor estimated the man to be some 12 feet tall. This in itself is interesting enough, but he went on to say that a man, not a child, 3 feet tall, was buried with him. On September 2nd, 2000, my assistant, Don Ensign, and I went to interview the man and were taken to the grave site. We got stuck in the fast creek, limiting our time to the site, which was located on the flat top of a high hill overlooking the Jurassic Badlands of West Texas. Not much could be seen in the reddish sandy soil, but some fist-sized rocks, brush, and weeds covered the surrounding area. The Texas Panther Cave, a giant woman. In Central Texas, there is a cave known as the Panther Cave. Sometime in the 1940s, Glen Rose County-style lawyer Bull Adams excavated a woman there 7 feet tall. Her bones were displayed from time to time. The last I knew of them was in speaking to his widow, who still had them but didn't want to bother letting anyone see them. The only photograph I've seen of the giant woman showed the bones laid out on a car hood. They were dark red-brown. Another interesting thing about Panther Cave is the figurines painted on the cave walls. The figures are very similar to those drawn or painted on the huge cliff wall at the Black Dragon Wash near Blanding, Utah. The figures are about 10 feet tall, of men in robes with square shoulders. At both sites, a normal man would need scaffolding of a ladder at least 6 feet tall to paint them. They could have been easily painted by giant men 10 to 12 feet tall. In a quick sketch, Deborah Huglin showed me that a pictograph looked like found in Laughlin, Utah, allegedly painted by the Paiute Indians, and seemed to show a normal man being chased by men 10 feet tall. Lovelock Cave is in Nevada, where the Smithsonian excavated the 60 mummies, 7 to 10 feet tall. Frank Hammer. Anyone who knows the history of the Great Depression of the 1930s knows about Bonnie and Clyde, the infamous couple who robbed and shot their way through Texas banks. Clyde Barrows and Bonnie Parker ended their much-publicized crime spree in one of their stolen cars riddled by hundreds of bullets on a Texas back road. That ending was orchestrated by Mr. Frank Hammer, a Texas lawman forever cementing his fame. But when Hammer was a young man, he too was shot up by another bad guy. While he was recuperating at a Texas hospital from his gun wounds, he went for walks along the Sabin River. A pile of gravel looked like a good place to sit down. Out of boredom, he began throwing the small rocks into the river, finally ending up with a hole a few feet deep. At this depth, he began to find the bones of an ancient giant man. He told that this giant's thigh bone came all the way from the ground up to his waist. Frank was over 6 feet tall. The man would have been about 12 feet tall. He continued to dig and found the man's skull, which he estimated to be at least twice the size of his. To his regret, later on, he had thrown the bones into the river as well, not realizing at the time their significance. And this is best known for the Alamo, but there were giant men there too, and they buried their dead in mounds similar to those back east. Utah Bigfoot giants. This wall drawing from Dry Forks Canyon, Utah, shows 2 giant men, and one has disproportionately large feet. Is it lack of talent in the artist, or possibly a fairly accurate depiction of a Patagon, a Bigfoot, similar to what Pigafetta, the Spanish conqueror, saw when they landed on the beach of Patagonia? He wrote extensively about the giant men there, but he named the land Patagonia, or Bigfoot, because the big men there had big feet. Note also in the drawing that the man appears to be about twice or 3 times as tall as a smaller figure, and his 6 fingers on each hand. The long spines coming out of both sides of his helmet look something like Middle Eastern figures. And are these metal swords behind his shoulders? They also look at the figurines at Panther Cave in Central Texas. Are those swords behind the giant? All right, how about the Texas Aggies small-headed giants? In the 30 years that I've been working with fossils, says Joe Taylor, the numbers of people who have told me stories are endless. I believe that most of them did so because they felt like I wouldn't make fun of them for telling me the stories they were reluctant to tell others. I'm a good listener, he said, and always try to respect people and take them at face value, of course. Of course, listening to someone's story shouldn't be taken as agreeing with them, but people want to be respected. I know of many instances where some excited person told a college professor about what they had found, only to be discounted and dismissed out of hand, causing the person to keep their story to themselves. In 1995, an insurance salesman who had heard of my fossils came into the studio here in Crosbytown, Texas. He was a hunter, he said, and began telling me that while hunting down near Waco, Texas, on a private ranch, they came up on a team of archaeologists from A&M University, located at Bryan College Station. The inquisitive hunters were told that they were excavating giant human skeletons. Furthermore, they had small heads. Yes, I know. Most would begin to shake their heads in disbelief. But that's not the end. The end of the story. The next time they were hunting, I guess a week or 2 later, at most, they went to the giant site again. This time the site was cordoned off, and they were not allowed in. My recollection was that the skeletons were about 10 feet tall. Did giants draw a pterodactyl? In 1997, when I went to Black Dragon Wash near, he talked about that, how on the wall. Dennis Swift and Carl Baugh, famous archaeologist, creation scientist, to trace over on clear mylar the alleged drawing of the pterodactyl. I noticed some human figures nearby. The tops of the drawings were about 10 feet above the ground. Did a giant man reach that high and draw them? Who knows, right? A Chinese man named Cheng Wao Gao in 1845 to 1893 was 8 feet tall. He could write his name on a wall at the height of over 10 feet. And here's the last one. Let's see. Actually, there's 2 more here. In Wisconsin mounds in 1876, a medical doctor, J.N. Dehart, found vertebrae large enough than those of the present type. Another report, but probably the same find, says that a giant skull was also found. At La Crescent, Wisconsin, presumably at about 5 miles north of Dresbeck, Wisconsin, the bones of people over 8 feet tall were found in 1888. Another account, but probably the same find, said there were 7 giant skeletons, 7 to 8 feet tall. In 1884, in the Kanawha County, West Virginia. In 1884, a skeleton measuring 7 feet 6 inches tall was found in a massive stone structure similar to one inside of the mound at the Kanawha County, West Virginia. The Kanawha mound contained a skeleton 7 feet tall that was in a partially upright position, leaning against a hard clay wall. The bones were badly decayed except for the left wrist that was preserved by 2 heavy copper bracelets. There's the copper again. The mound measured 35 feet high, 175 feet at base, and an interior mound was 15 feet shorter than the outer. It contained a vault made of timber measurings 12 by 13 feet. Reported in the American Antiquarian. Volume 6, 1884. Cyrus Thomas, Report on Mound Exploration of the Bureau of Ethnology. 12th Annual Report of Smithsonian Bureau of Ethnology. Yeah, I bet. Okay, so those are the mounds, and those are the giants that were found in those giant lumped up mounds, right? Amazing, isn't it? So many found, so many found. And they're telling the truth. I believe them. Yeah. Copper cooking and everything. Copper pots. Anyway. So does anybody have any questions at all here? I think that sums up the teaching on giants and mounds and Indians, ancient Indians. But does anybody have any questions at all? Comments, questions? These giants got... Yeah, that's funny. Dead in Dead Country, here's the thing about it. We're a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, and the DNA gets worse the farther down you go. In the beginning, when God created man, they could marry their sisters and all that other stuff. They had to. They had nobody else. But because of the DNA was perfect. But as time went on, down to Moses' time, God said, no, you quit doing that. Because the DNA was getting worse. It was corrupt. Sin had corrupted it. Right? Good question about how mutilated. Bruce asked the question, how big was Adam and Eve? I don't know. I don't know. If I had to speculate, 8 feet maybe. That's my guess. You know, that's my guess. I don't think they were as small as us. I don't. Are you against, I have a question. Are you against Native Americans having long hair and mohawks? Yeah, well, mohawks, I guess no. But long hair, yes. God says long hair on a man is an abomination. Nature even teaches us that it's wrong for a man to have long hair. So men shouldn't have long hair. Well, I didn't say, I don't think they were giants. I think they were bigger people. But if you disagree with that, that's okay. That's a theory. I don't have any proof. Right? I don't have any proof. Do you have any idea of how the giants post-flood came to be? Well, there's a few different ones, but nothing that is concrete. I think Samson had, by the way, Jeremiah, Samson had long hair because of a vow of a Nazirite. That was a Nazirite vow, and it was a shame to him. That was bearing the reproach of the tribe. He didn't have long hair because of any other reason. That was a vow. It showed that he was set apart for that, to bear the reproach of the shame. You say God's everything is mighty. Can God create another God like the God? That doesn't even make sense. No, God wouldn't do that, because it would be created, and it wouldn't be God, because God has always existed. There has never been a time there was not God. Where are you? Do you work at this library? No, this is my library. This is part of my library. It goes from here to here, 3 deep, and then in that room it goes 1, 2, 3, 2 or 3 double shelves deep, 2 or 3 layers deep. Yeah. Mike, I don't think it was either, but I don't mind you asking about the books. I don't care. You can ask about them. Today we live in this society where it's like people think it's bad to read. Michael, what do you base that on? Yeah, I don't know. The wives of Noah's sons were not pure. We have no proof of that. You know, I can tell men from women if they're dressed like men, but God said that women were not supposed to have short hair and men were supposed to have short hair. That's what God said. That's God's rules. Let's see. Pastor Cooley, people are asking if the wives of Noah were impure. I have nothing in Scripture that says that they were. But we have something in Scripture that says that Ham saw his father's nakedness and cursed be Canaan. Right? So, yeah. And I don't believe that Noah's wife was the mother of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. I think there's a possibility that she wasn't the wife of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. I'll put it that way. I think there's a possibility. Well, also you have to be careful too, because women used to have such long hair. Women would have such long hair, it was down to like their knees and lower, you know what I mean? That if a man had hair down to here, that wouldn't be considered long. But now we have women that chop off their hair, and that seems like it's longer hair. But that's not compared to what women used to wear their hair like. Oh man, I'm going over time. I got to get out of here. Let's see. Somebody asked a question. Who is their mother then? I don't know. But they don't really reckon the genealogies of women too often. It just says that Noah's wife. It does not say their mother. So that's the difference. It doesn't say their mother. It says Noah's wife. So again, that's speculation. I wouldn't argue about it with anybody. Yes, I believe Bigfoot and those Yetis and all that could be hybrids or giants or some type of creepy fourth dimensional hybrid creature, weird thing. No, Noah's was pure in the eyes of the Lord. That's correct. Yep, Mike C, that's right. I've been to the Ark a few times. It's good stuff. You know, why Buddhism and Hinduism is not progressive like Christianity. Well, I don't think Christianity is progressive. I think people have made it progressive over the years. They've bastardized it. When the giants died, did they become demons? That's a good question. You know, there are some people that when they died in the flood, some people question those that died in the flood if their spirits roam the earth and they are the devils. I've heard that theory. I'm not 100% in agreement with it because I'm just not sure. I don't know. Because the Bible talks about spirits and devils being the same or uses the words interchangeably. So I'm not sure. I used to think that more than I do now. I'm just not completely convinced of it as of now. I'm not completely convinced. Anyway, so Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Time. We'll be back on and look forward to it. I'm just looking to see if there's anything else on here. And look forward to it for sure. And share this video with all your friends and share them with other people that need to hear the truth. And, you know, we can get it out there to them. Okay. We'd like to do that. So we want to share this with as many people as we can. I put these on sermon audio, all that. Susie, you're very welcome. Praise the Lord. I hope it was a blessing for all of you. And so God judged outward appearances. I don't understand your question. Some of those questions are strange. Yeah, like the video. We're at 95. Thumbs up the video. We'd like to see it get to 100 before I take off here. We're at 95 right now. And 96. 4 more. 98. 2 more. Almost there. All right, we're almost there. Yeah, praise the Lord. I'm glad. And there's more to come. Hey, you guys took 2 off. It was 98. There it is. There it goes back to 98. Somebody's playing games with me. Yeah, Katie Porter. I don't know why you're not getting any. 99. We're almost there. Why you're getting those, but anyway, keep in contact. 100. We hit 100. Keep up in contact with us here. We'll be working on our website, working on our new equipment, trying to get this broadcast to come out better. And we'll be working on it. I've got some fun music and other things that we're going to have. And I'll be able to have 3 screens here running things constantly going back and forth as soon as I get that all figured out, which will happen in the near future. And hey, have a happy 4th tomorrow. I'm going to celebrate independence. And I know where it came from. By the way, I am preaching a message tomorrow to our people over at we're going to be at one of our members' house and we're going to enjoy ourselves. And I'm preaching a message on 8 people, 7 or 8 people you should know that paved the way for independence in America. And amen. It'll be good stuff. So, and I'll probably put that sermon online, but it's going to be dealing with 8 people from history, God-fearing people. Not all the founding fathers were saved. No, I'm not even talking about the founding fathers, those men, except one of them I might talk about, but the rest of them are God-fearing men. So, but anyway, I'll preach that tomorrow. Anyway, that's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. And we're going to spend the whole day out there at one of our members' houses out there and enjoy ourselves. And eat some good food and pray and rejoice in the Lord and thank God for his goodness. Because you know what? We still do have a lot of liberty here. We do expose the evil that goes on in America, of course. But you know what? Yes, I believe George Washington was a saved man, and I believe he was a Baptist man, and I have proof, and I'm going to use sworn affidavits and everything else to prove that he was a Baptist man. But that's for another episode, for another day. But I intend to prove that he was a Baptist. Absolutely. Well, we need to get things on sermon audio faster. I don't know, Hamilton. I don't know. I'm talking about, but Washington is who I'm discussing. Anyway, what do you think about Washington's vision at Valley? I think the man was a saved. No, Benjamin Franklin was not a saved man. Benjamin Franklin was a part of the Hellfire Club. He was a club, and he was a pervert. But he was a good statesman in a lot of ways. But he was a perv. Washington went to a Masonic lodge early, but didn't visit a Masonic lodge for 30 years after that. And wrote that in his private letters that he had never been to a Masonic lodge. People, I want to help you with something also. That picture of George Washington in a Masonic apron was not a portrait of George Washington. He didn't take a portrait of himself in a Masonic apron. Somebody made that picture up. Okay, just thought I'd help you with that. Because people see that picture of Washington. Oh, well, he must have posed for that. Yeah, he posed for it in color. So stupid. Anyway, not you guys. I'm just saying it's dumb. No, Thomas Jefferson was not a Christian. He wasn't. He was a deist. But I think he repented of what he had done wrong with the Jesuits later. But that's another history that I do not have time to go into. There's a lot of people that have that took pictures like that. That doesn't mean that they were Masons. I could show you 1,000 preachers back then in the day that took pictures with one hand like that. A lot of them did it, but they weren't Masons. Anyway, he was a Mason. He went to a Masonic lodge in the beginning, but not after. Anyway, whatever. I don't even care because people make such a big, huge deal about that. But there's a lot of people that went to Masonic lodges early on and then quit the Masons. The Masons were against the crown, and the crown was what fought against liberty in America. So a lot of people joined the Masons early on at that stage because of that. But that doesn't mean it's right. I'm not condoning what they did. And I stand against the Masonic order completely. I'm just telling you that there's more to the story than what people realize. And a lot of people joined those Masonic lodges in the beginning. At that time, you have to understand it was like a free man's thing also. But it was like a free man's group. I don't think a lot of them knew what was really going on. Some of the higher ups did. But I actually believe that from what I've looked into, that Washington said in his writings he never went to a lodge in 30 years. And he was also baptized by a Baptist man named John Gannot. And he also surrendered his sword that Lafayette gave him. He surrendered that sword to John Gannot. No, the founder of American Baptist denomination was not Roger Williams. It was John Clark. History lesson with Pastor Cooley. It was not Roger Williams, because Roger Williams was not a Baptist. He was never baptized Baptist. Never. I didn't know that. The founder of the First Baptist Church in Rhode Island was John Clark. Let me see here. Hang on a second. While I've got you on here, this is the man that founded the First Baptist Church in America, John Clark. There are no denominations in the Bible. There are identifications in the Bible, and Baptists identify with Bible doctrine. That's why I'm a Baptist, and I don't apologize for it, and I don't care if it makes a million of you mad. I know the history, and I will challenge you any day of the week, any of you on the history, going all the way back from that good old-fashioned any day of the week you want to. I'm ready. Any day. And I'm not being arrogant. I'm just saying I've studied it and I understand it. I understand the doctrine. I contend for a doctrine, not as much a name, but a doctrine. There's a difference. I contend for the doctrine. Now, we could never escape the name. But then again, if you've studied the history like I have, and you've seen that Rome bloodied and murdered and crushed the skulls of the children, the babies, and the people, yeah, you'd know that those Anabaptists, Lollards, Donatists, Novatianists, Petrobrusians, Arnold of Brescia, all of those men that died and women that died, and the Waldenses in the valleys of Piedmont since the times of the apostles that were murdered because of their faith, because of believers' baptism, because they would not accept Rome's infant baptism, and they were slaughtered for it. Oh, yeah. You want to get my ire up, go ahead and do it. We'll talk about that all day long because I got no beef with talking about that. But bring your facts with you because I got those too. And I'm willing to go to town with those facts any day of the week. It's very passionate for me because those people were murdered and bludgeoned. I don't deal with anything that. Why do I care about Hamilton? Yes, after the Giants series. That's okay. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not upset with anybody. I'm just saying it's a very passionate topic. But no, I don't plan on getting into it right now anyway. But I will someday because I want to go through the information. I want to go through the information though. And all that good stuff. You all know me though. You know how I am. I get passionate about things. So I care about those people. I care about what they stood for and why they died and the Savior that they followed all the way to their grave and sometimes burned at the stake alive and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? It's just, it means a lot. You know, it does. It does. It matters to me. I mean, there's a huge, I don't have the book out here, but the book, Martyr's Mirrors, it's this thick, and it's full of people that were murdered by Rome. The Baptist battle for tomorrow, I'm going to preach that message and put it on as the Baptist battle for liberty. But you're right, Mike. It does need to come back. I know. I've been thinking about it a lot, and it may be something I do on the side again. But I am going to do another Baptist battle for liberty. But it's just, it's tomorrow, actually, that one I do, it won't be online, but I'll put it online when I'm done with it. But it'll be an episode of Baptist Battle for Liberty. 8 men on the road to independence, of American independence, you should know. And most of them are Baptists. Some of them aren't, but the main ones are. And it's important because we didn't just get here by accident. But no, we got a lot to go with the Giants. We're not done with the Giants yet. Ask Dr. Murphy. It doesn't have to make sense to you. You have to believe what the Bible says. It doesn't have to make sense to you. God never said, believe this if it makes sense to you. He said, believe me. That's what he said. He didn't tell you to understand it. He told you to believe. By the way, go listen to my sermon. Go listen to my sermon on 185 verses, I think it is. I think it's 180 verses on the Trinity. Go listen to that one. Amen. My goodness, I got to get out of here. I got stuff to do. We got to set up for everything tomorrow and get everything going. Listen, I love y'all. I do. I appreciate you being there. I want to teach you. I want to help you. I don't know, some may disagree on things, and you're going to see me get passionate. You're going to see me get fired up, and you're going to see me but that's me. That's who I am. If you wanted to listen to somebody else, you'd turn over to the other channel and listen to somebody that'll put you to sleep. But I'm not that kind of guy. I get excited. And Susie cooked dinner while I was. What'd you cook, Susie? Amen. I do. I love it. I'm passionate about the Word of God, passionate about the truths of the Bible, and pork stew. I love pork. We're going to be cooking so much food out there tomorrow. So much. But anyway, praise the Lord. It's good. So you ought to come for a visit sometime. Come visit Northfield, Minnesota sometime and come visit our church. I'm not saying you got to move here. I'm saying just come visit sometime. And Becca and my mom made 10 pounds of potato salad. I don't take it personally, but I can tell you that Zwingli drowned Anabaptist. He said, if they want a baptism, then they'll get it. And he took all of them and he chained them all up and he dropped them off and he drowned them to death for baptism. Not my kind of guy. I'm not mad. That's just the truth. Not a nice guy. Not a good guy. Not a good guy. Do you have to have 1,000 subscribers to make live stream? Yes. I guess. I don't know. I think so. I do appreciate the reformers too, because God used the Reformation to bring out the King James Bible. However, the manuscripts were from the Waldensians too, which were the ancient Baptists, so they can't really say they didn't get anything from them because they did. But that's another story for another day. Again, I love Baptist history. I love the history of the Bible, and I can't forget about some of that stuff. Amen. Can't forget about it. But I thank God for the people that God used. Yep. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Friday will be 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Time. No, Dr. Murphy, you're on here to try to mess with people's brains, but I hope you understand that it doesn't work because your screwball false doctrine doesn't shake anybody here. And if you're here to try to subvert people and try to subvert the truth, it's not going to work. I'm just going to kick you off. Because I genuinely think you are. I genuinely think you're trying to subvert people. Well, then you ought to listen to what the scriptures say, because it's very easy. Go listen to the sermon on the Trinity, the 180 verses that are set there, and it's very simple. It's illustrated very easy. And you say, well, I don't understand it. God never told you to understand it. He told you to believe it. How do you understand eternity when you're not eternal? You find me quite rude? Okay, bye. Why? Because I won't let you push false doctrine here? And I call you on it? Unsubscribing is like telling my mommy. I believe the word of God. I believe what God's word says, and I'm going to stand for it. That's just the way it goes. If you leave, you leave. Hey, you didn't make me glad, and you ain't going to make me mad. That's how it works. It's just the way it goes. What I do for the Lord. That's what I do. I don't do for anybody else. To make you happy. I love the Lord. That's what I do it for. That's who I do it for. Anyway, so I'm gonna tell you what, those Trinity deniers are a dime a dozen, though, and they hate they hate that doctrine with a passion. Most of them are oneness Pentecostals, and they have a real hate for that for a reason. They do. They do. But it's sad. They usually come with other heresies. No, the Trinity's not a lie. Very simple. Goodbye. Yep. Well, anyway, that person's gone. So that's the way it goes. But anyway, I got to get gone too. So you all have a good 4th. And I hope and pray that you think on the blessings of God and that you remember how good God is and to you and how good God is to us to give you, to give you liberty and freedom, even that we have here today. So thank God for that, and I didn't think a giant show would make so many people mad, but whatever. Anyway, it's okay. Do I check Facebook private messages? Yes, sometimes I do, unless it's creepy perverts that send me weird stuff, then I don't answer it. Or if it's some woman that sends me a weird thing like, "Are you there?" That's always a setup for I'm going to show you porn. Or I'm going to try to spam you with something perverted. Or I'm going to do something weird. Or I'm going to say something provocative to you. So introduce yourself, say something, that sort of thing. But I usually, if those women come on with something, I usually have my wife check it a lot of times. I won't even answer them because I'm not trying to get set up by some creeps. So, nope. I'm very careful about stuff like that. Yeah, I have no desire to look at some. I just like, nope, that's good. I mean, if you want to send me an email and you want it to like be like a legitimate email to try to get a hold of me, that's fine. But if you're going to send me something creepy and something weird, I mean, it's like on Facebook, I can't like all the Filipino whores and all that other. It's like they try to send you. Well, it's probably some 500-pound fat dude that's a pervert trying to send you pictures of women and all this stuff. That's probably a pervert, but I'm real selective about it. I'm careful. Try to be anyway. But man, what a crazy world we live in. Anyway, but good. Hope you enjoyed it all. And oh yeah, from the Philippines, man. You better believe it. Yeah, porn bots are programmed, right? All that. Yeah, I mean, it's just like I don't even care what it is. It's just I don't want anything to do with any of it. I try to keep it away from me. Yeah. So, and I'm very careful with women trying to contact me and stuff. I mean, I'll talk to somebody, email, but if it gets weird, I just put my wife on with a woman or whatever. I'm not. And I don't meet with women alone either. I don't do that either. So those are things that I'm old fashioned, biblical, old fashioned. Stay away from that stuff by the grace of Almighty God. So, just keep that checks and balances because Satan's always trying to trip you up. So you pray for one another. Yeah. You pray for each other. Pray for me. pray for us. Pray for the needs that we have for the ministry, and pray the Lord would bless us and continue to allow us to be able to do more. 6 hours a week takes up a lot of time, and now it's even more than 6 hours. But anyway, but the Lord blesses us, but we've got a lot to do here. So anyway, we will talk to you again soon on Friday. Enjoy your 4th, everybody.